Canadian exports to the U.S. dropped dramatically in March. Statistics Canada says exports fell 6.6%, the biggest drop in 5 years. And the news comes on the day that the U.S. President Donald Trump and Canada's new Prime Minister Mark Carney have been meeting. Let's go to Andrew DiCapua. He is principal economist with the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. He joins us to talk some more about this. Thanks for your time today.
Good to be with you, Marilla.
Can you give us sort of a wider picture here of what the export trade looked like for March?
Yeah, so monthly merchandise exports for Canada declined 0.2%. That's the second consecutive monthly decline after two very strong months where we saw Canadian exporters sending more goods down to the United States because Americans wanted to stockpile goods to get ahead of the tariffs. Now, that story continues. The headline number is a little bit misleading, even though exports to the United States were down nearly 7%. We saw exports to non-U.S. countries up 25%. So a little bit of optimism in terms of looking at diversification. Now, of course, this is a much larger process. Goes to show you how much we really need to start exporting to other countries to make up for the lost ground with the United States. But those sectors that really performed in March, autos, aluminum, forestry, and agriculture, are all key sectors that the United States needs. And contrary to what the president says, Americans are voting with their dollars.
Was there an indication of what the other countries are? What are the other countries we were exporting to, and what kinds of goods we were sending?
Yeah, so exports to other countries, we saw, basically almost a dollar for dollar replacement in the value in terms of what we lost with the United States, what we gained with other countries. And so that was mostly with regards to higher exports of crude oil and also gold. Of course, gold is a commodity traded in times of higher uncertainty, but it was really reassuring just to see that crude oil being exported to European markets like Germany, also to Japan. So very, very promising in terms of, buds of optimism in terms of diversification.
What's your take on the meeting between Trump and Carney? What did you get from that?
Well, of course, we don't want to get into too much wishful thinking here, right? We're on a good rally of optimism in the country. I think we've got to keep that going. It started off quite nice, right? A lot of pleasantries given to and from the president, to the prime minister, of course. He says a lot of great, he says he has a great deal of respect for the prime minister. This is all great for Canada-U.S. relations. At the end of the day, we need to, the actions need to start matching the words, right? The president is saying a lot of things. There needs to be consistent messaging from the White House in terms of the tariff policy. It seems like tariffs are going to be the new norm, but there are two things that I took away from the meeting. One, USMCA or CUSMA trade agreement compliance is going to be very important in the negotiations. We saw an increase in trade agreement utilization from exporters from 30% to 50%. So people are using the trade agreement more. And diversification, right? So we saw that in the trade data today. Of course, a good start, but we're going to need to see actions from the president.
Did you feel or get a feeling of what's to come when the prime minister said, we do need to explore new markets. We can't essentially put all our eggs in one basket. Did that give you an indication that we still need to move forward with diversification because what has been lost to the U.S. might not come back?
Yeah. So what I always say is, it's very hard to replace $500 billion in annual value, right, to other markets. What we saw in March data was that it took a 25% increase in shifting of trade to other markets to account for a 6% decline with the United States, just to give you a sense of what the value is, the value differences rather. So, of course, there's a lot of momentum on the diversification front. We want to break down barriers within the country to be able to look to other markets to move goods and services across our big country, right, to get to Europe, to get to Asia. So really encouraging, signs there. And of course, news out of the United States that they have sort of come to an agreement with the UK in terms of lowering tariffs in the exchange for some sort of quota system. So there is some good news coming out of today, and hopefully that continues.
Okay. They also talked generally about negotiations kind of getting underway. Is it your feeling that they're beginning early negotiations for CUSMA, or that there might be a side deal to what already exists?
Yeah, it's not really clear what the objective of the president is. Of course, one of the reassuring things from what I took from the meeting was that the discussion was really anchored until it got unanchored, of course, towards the end of the meeting with all sorts of things from the president. But it was anchored in the agreement, right? The Canada, U.S., Mexico trade agreement. The president views this as a win for the administration. If we can show that Canadian exporters and most of the value that we're sending down to the United States is under the trade agreement, and that the trade agreement is so-called working, the president may take off some of the pressure. So my advice to the business community, of course, is to increase compliance spending, looking at ways to becoming trade agreement compliant, and that could help us, of course, in the negotiations.
Interesting. All right, Andrew, I do have to leave it there, sir, but thanks for your time today. Appreciate you spending some time on the close.
Thanks, Marilla. Take care.